Good afternoon. Thank you for your patience. My name's Kyle. On behalf of Sun City Lincoln Hills, we are happy to host a U.S. Army Corps of Engineer presentation on the Titan missile site. A little bit of business. This is on Zoom, and we are recording it. So those that aren't able to be here today will still be able to see today's presentation. When I talked to Tyler Stalker with U.S. Army Corps, he said this will be about a 30-minute presentation, and then there'll be time afterwards in here, out there for question and answer. The water board is also here. I also want to recognize that we have Supervisor Landon, Council Member Andriotta, Council Member Joyner, Council Member Lauritsen, Sean Scully, City Manager, Representative Joe Patterson's office as a representative here, as well as Kevin Kiley's office. So if I missed anyone, raise your hand. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Tyler.
All right. How are you guys all doing this afternoon? All right. So this is the first introductory informational public meeting by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. My name is Tyler Stalker. Some of you may be familiar with me. I'm the public affairs specialist for the former Beale Air Force Base Titan 1A missile site FUDS project. I'd like to start by thanking Kyle and the Sun City Lincoln Hills Community Association for allowing us to use the venue today and broadcasting today's meeting over Zoom. That session is being recorded, and we'll share those for those who couldn't make it to today's meeting later on. Hopefully you guys have all had a chance to sign in. I know many of you were already in here when we got the sign-in sheets out, but we do have sign-in sheets out in the front area there. On it, there is a section to sign up to be on our mailing list through email and through postal mail so that we can send you direct updates. So please get on that mailing list. And let's see here. And then we also have that'll allow us to contact you, but so that you guys can get a hold of us and contact us, we have a new website up and available as well. It is titan1acleanup.com. And so at that site, we have a lot of the latest project status information there. We have links to GeoTracker in our administrative record, and we have some answers to some frequently asked questions on that site. So that's titan1acleanup.com. It also provides contact information for how to get a hold of me and the project team. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Sacramento District is hosting today's informational meeting to introduce our team to the community, talk a little bit about the FUDS program, more specifically our status on the FUDS project here in Lincoln, and then we want to talk to as many of you as we can, and so that's why we're doing an open house kind of forum here today, as we have 3 people up here, and then we have a handful of other experts here that can talk to you about different aspects of the project. We have some posters in here around the ballroom, but they are also all the same posters that are out kind of in the alcove outside the ballroom where we'll have our experts. But we wanted to give you a couple areas where you can see the information since there are so many people here today. While some of you may be familiar with the content and the information that we will provide today in today's presentation, we felt it necessary that we present everyone in the community with the same information straight from the horse's mouth from the Corps of Engineers here today. So we wanted to make sure that you all had a big picture overview of what the project is and what we're doing, since this is, like I said, our first formal interaction with this group. We're hopeful that the content will answer many of your questions. But like I said, we have about a dozen people here, happy to talk to you and answer your questions. And if we can't, we're happy to write them down and see how we can get back to you to get those answers for you. And lastly, before we get started, I will introduce our team. Up on the stage here, we have our Sacramento District FUDS Program Manager, Carmen DeFazio. We have our new project manager, Tim Crummett. Our technical lead engineer, Matt Marlatt. Also in the building today, we have geologist Jessica Parker, toxicologist Mark Jones, Assistant District Counsel Kevin Cullen. And then we have a few others that are familiar with FUDS and Titan 1A but aren't directly on the project team. So those are former project managers. Maria Pruitt and Joe Lipka, project specialist Chrissy Grill Block, environmental engineer Scott Begneski, Sacramento District Public Affairs Chief Rick Brown, and South Pacific Division Public Affairs Chief Nancy Allen. Kyle did a great job of thanking our other guests here today, so I won't do that again. So with that, I will hand it off to Carmen DeFazio to get us started.
All right, welcome to everyone in person and also online. We really appreciate you guys. Coming out today. This is not common for us to have this much public interest, and we love it. So just understand we are very thankful you're here, and we find this encouraging to find people engaged in their community and part of the process. So we value our stakeholders and your involvement to the investigation and the remediation project that's here. We wish it was on every project. So just wanted to make sure everyone knew that. Next slide. So I'm just going to give a quick background on what FUDS is, how the program operates. So Beale Air Force Base, Titan 1A, is a formerly used defense site. So that's a FUDS. It's one of the remaining FUDs identified with CERCLA cleanup activities that requires their CERCLA response. Funding and execution of the FUDS program is prioritized using a risk management process. So that means that projects with the highest risk to human health and the environment are addressed first. FUDS has successfully closed out thousands of sites. The Army is the executive agent for FUDS, and they give the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, we call ourselves USACE, but you can call us the Corps also. We are the managers of the program. CERCLA, so I use CERCLA, it's a CERCLA response, is the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liabilities Act. So it's an act, it's part of Congress, and it has rules that's associated with it. So CERCLA is also known as Superfund. So you might have heard that term. And it authorizes the president to respond to releases and threatened releases of hazardous substances. So under CERCLA, it dictates for federal facilities and contamination how we respond to it. Okay, so there's a lot of requirements, and there's a phased process to follow. Next slide. So Titan 1A is an eligible FUDS project. In order to be eligible, it needed to be previously owned, leased to, or otherwise possessed by the U.S. It had to be under jurisdiction of the Department of Defense, and it also had to be transferred prior to October of '86. Titan became an authorized FUDS property in 1993. In addition, you have to have known or potential contamination at the site to have projects. And so the projects became eligible and approved a month later. And it includes a CON-HGRW, so that's a containerized hazardous toxic radiological waste site, as well as the site we're talking about today, which is the HGRW, the hazardous toxic radiological waste site. So there is another project on the Titan site we're not discussing today. That's the containerized part, and that's the 4 underground storage tanks and the pressurized oxygen tanks. Okay, so that's not an active project right now, meaning it's not funded by Congress. That doesn't mean that we can't advocate and get it funded, but it is a risk-based program. So tonight we're talking about the TCE contamination that's part of that HTRW project. And I'll turn it over now to Tim Crummett, our current project manager.
Thank you, Carmen. I'm going to take a little pause in our presentation right here to, there's an elephant in the room, and I want to address the elephant in the room. I'm going to give you my position on how I'm addressing it and how I'm going to interact with you. So we have a carcinogen in the groundwater. It's under the ground. It's not too far from you. Most of you could take a pitching wedge and put a golf ball on top of it. Sorry, not most of you. Those of you who live close enough, Snapdragon Lane. Hundreds of you could depending on your how well you drive a ball, you could take your driver and put a golf ball on the top of it. So it's in your neighborhood. We all agree, I believe everybody in this room, we want it removed. Every agency here that I'm looking out at, all parties, we want human health protected. We want the environment protected. That's why most of us have the jobs that we do. What we do not agree on, hopefully we can get to an agreement point, is what is exactly going on underneath the ground. What's going on underneath that we can't see, and part of that's the elephant in the room. We don't exactly agree on that. Should you be concerned? Is it going to affect your housing prices? Is the plume growing? Is the plume moving? Why is this taking so long? What is being done? Why are your questions not being answered? We don't all agree on those answers. That's, hello, Mr. Elephant. Give you a little background on my approach on how I'm walking into this. Earlier in my career, my sons were toddlers. I spent an entire summer pretty much away from them for the entire summer. I spent it at the Monterey Airport. It's a FUD site. It's a TCE contaminated FUD site. There was TCE in the groundwater underneath many, many homes in that neighborhood. The hot spot was underneath a child care facility. Public concern was ramped up. We just like you, we had congressional interest, we had senators interested in that site. So I spent a summer collecting data, putting in monitoring wells, at another monitoring well, getting geoprobes, poking this probe into the ground all over the place, collecting information. For the next couple years, every 3 months, I was down in Monterey, not a bad place to go, but sampling this groundwater, collecting information, and we put together a plan how to remediate. And when I say remediate, it means clean up, one way or the other, get this stuff out of the groundwater. Around 5 years later, we had a celebration. We did it. In fact, some of the congressmen came to our little party that we put on. It was so cool to be part of that. To have something successful, which we always don't put our time and effort into something successful, it was pretty cool. In fact, I think some of you were sampled that site with me. I'm going to take you to another FUD site, also contaminated with TCE. It's located in between Davis and Winters. Late 90s, I started working that site. I think it was 1998 was the first time I stepped foot on that site. We jumped right away. We jumped into collecting data, getting groundwater wells in there, and we so wanted to get this site cleaned up for the landowners. I personally did. I was a little overjealous. our team was a little overzealous. We jumped into a remediation process. We hit it hard with injection, enhanced bioremediation, and we put in a pretty good pump and treat system. And we hit it hard, and we brought those levels down to acceptable levels. The water board agreed. Okay, you're under the MCLs. And then the following year came, and they crept up a little bit. And then year after year after year, our TCE levels came up and up and up. And to this day, that plume is over a mile long. It didn't feel good. It didn't feel good. Did we have the right intentions? Yes. But we did not gather as much information as we could. We did not take enough time to completely understand what was going on underneath that surface. And I don't want to do that again. I want to have this success. I want to to do this the right way. That's my aim for this project. And that's our... So I'm gonna get a little simple with my analogy here. Matt will balance me out when he comes up. He will balance out this simplicity. So that toddler I was talking about, he's graduating from Casa Roble High School on Friday. We've bought a big sheet cake from Costco. We're picking it up on Friday, one of those big sheet cakes. Think of this site as a sheet cake. You see the surface, what's going on underneath that frosting that you're looking at. So has it been contaminated? Let's say, okay, there's something in the cake we do not want in the cake. How do we find out what's in the cake? We can't destroy the cake. So you take straws and you punch a straw into that cake, you pull it up. Oh, there's some layers here. Oh, look at that. There's filling over here. Up. Each straw you pull out, you can test it. You can define the properties of that cake, and each straw gives you more and more information to give you a picture of what is truly happening within that cake. How much is it contaminated? The more straws we put in, the more the picture it gives us what's contaminated. How much TCE is in the fields, close to your houses? So we're gonna talk numbers in a minute to give you a little visualization. It always helps me to visualize. Take a ream of paper. It's approximately four inches thick. Take it like here. We talk parts per billion. Micrograms per liter is another way to put that. So if you have a ream of paper that's 400 sheets paper thick, and at the edge of our plume, it's 4. So imagine 4 of those parts, 4 sheets of paper out of that 400. Take that to 1 million. And it's 300 feet high. We're talking 1 billion. So 1 billion is 300,000 feet high, paper stacked upon paper. That's 56.8 miles. So that's the amount. It's a very minuscule amount. At the edge, our hot spot is 400. So out of a 56-mile high pile of paper, 400 of those sheets is this contamination. It's not easy to get out of the ground. We call it recalcitrant is the scientific term. It's recalcitrant. It fights to it's not very much in there, and it's hard to get out of the ground. So we want to do it right. So when you ask us what's going on this site, what's in the cake? All right, you're all here to find out what's in there. You want us to tell us. Do we know for certain? Do we know absolutely what's in there? No. Why do we say things like we have a stable plume? Are we confident of that? Well, we have a pretty good picture. You know, our picture is coming together well. Year after year after year, we put straws in the ground. And every 3 months, we go out and we sample it. And we sample those straws. And the more straws and the more data and the more it gives us a picture where we can be confident. Now, do we know everything? No. In fact, there's probably a couple areas I'd like to know a little bit better before we jump into a remediation. You know, the TCE will be cleaned up. It's not a fast process. It's not an easy process. But I can confidently say your health is not in any way a threat from this TC at this point. We know where it is, we know how it's moving, and we have a very clear picture, and we know where your homes are. And you know, from our perspective, from my perspective, there is no threat. I have zero incentive to hide anything from you. Why would I present something as false? I'm trying to come up with reasons. Maybe you could tell me. I admit, when I see the government official on TV, I tend to not believe him. So I can understand it. I can understand there's got to be some ulterior motive that's going on here. So I'll tell you, I'll make a deal. I'm willing to be wrong about what's in the cake, but you have to show me the evidence. You have to show me some information, some evidence of what's under there. I'm willing to be wrong with my picture of what's in there. I'm not willing to be wrong about going down a path that does not provide you with a clean cake. I am not willing to be wrong about that. I'm going to, everything within me, we're going to try to attempt to take this in a path that leads you with a clean cake. I want to be a good steward of your taxpayers' money, and in the end, I want a clean cake. That's what side I'm on. That's where I am with this elephant in the room. So thanks for that little pause. Thanks for, we'll go back to our regularly scheduled program. So, yeah, apologies to those who have heard this before, but this missile facility was completed in 1962, and there we go, and it was dismantled in 1968. So it was only operational for a couple years. It consisted of 3 silos, 160-foot deep silos. There's some underground features associated with this, storage tanks, many distribution lines, miles and miles of electrical wiring, water supply, things that made it possible for a crew to function and live under the ground and ready to launch a missile at a moment's notice. So 1968, Placer County acquired this property, and some adjacent parcels were acquired by private landowners. 1991, I know it was a long, long time ago, but that's when TCE was discovered. Trichloroethylene was found to be in the groundwater. It takes a while to get into the process that Carmen was referring to, and that happened in 1994. It became an official FUDS, a formerly used defense site. We were authorized to spend the Congress's budget and money to start addressing this site. So next slide, a little more history. 2000 to 2004, I actually worked on the site during this point, came out here many times to do groundwater sampling. There was a small scale pilot test. That's where we test a remediation, will this work? So we did that out here, extracted some groundwater, pulled about 10 pounds of TC out of the groundwater, removed it. In 2004, put in some soil vapor extraction tests were performed at 4 wells. Also, again, collecting information, giving us a picture of what is underneath the ground. 2007, feasibility study report was complete. There was an addendum adds, and a remedial alternative was there for consideration. And in 2007, we pulled the emergency brake on the site. Our program did. Part of being a steward of taxpayers' money is we want to assure it's spent appropriately and it's spent cleaning up a Department of Defense mess that they've left behind. And there was a question: is this all DOD? Is somebody else involved here? So unfortunately, that question took almost 10 years to answer. Attorneys were involved. Apology to the attorneys here in the rooms. 2008, we got it back, and we're fully back on board. We're taking complete responsibility, and we start the process. We re-engage and start the wheels turning on this site here. So 2019, 19 more groundwater wells were put in. More straws in the ground, 19 of them. In addition to the 14 wells that we had, 24 vapor probes were installed, and part of that was between the contamination and many of your houses to assure we do not have any vapor crossing that into your houses. Every 3 months, we would go out there and gather data. I know it looks like nothing's going on the site. Every time you drive by, it's as empty and vacant as can be. But every 3 months, people are out there, and that data they collect every 3 months comes back to the office, and a whole bunch of work goes on with people sitting at their desks and labs and sending it over to the water board and a lot of review process. So I know it doesn't look like anything's going on, but the wheels are churning and more information's being taken in. The picture is becoming clearer month after month after month. So we can go to the next slide. Here's our process. And this is mainly just to give us a reality check. We're on the green right now. We all want to be on the blue arrow, remedial action. We want someone out there digging or doing something to get this out. But like I say, we want to do it right, and we want to be put onto a path that does it right and doesn't cause more of a mess. So we're in the remedial investigation study right now. We're still gathering some of this data. Our schedule for 2004 is to come up with a proposed plan. And that's where we propose to you of, here's our plan where we think we can get to the remedial action. And there's some steps in between that which involve you. There's a couple points in there where the public is invited to give comments, and we, there is an official, that's a part of the official CERCLA process. So next slide. What's going on right now during this remedial investigation is we want to answer the question, how bad is the problem? You don't want to jump to conclusions when you really don't have a grasp of how bad is the situation out there. We call it nature and extent. What's the nature of this TCE? How does it function in the environment it's in? Well, there's parameters that are measured every quarter that help give us this answer. What's the turbidity, the oxygen reduction potential, the temperature of the water. There's these parameters that the pH of the water, do those change over time? It gives us more of a picture of what this plume is doing and how best to clean it up. So the feasibility study, that's where we develop some remedial action objectives. We define these conditions, and we evaluate the alternatives, and we move forward. So at this point, Matt's gonna, those of you who have been bored and I'm way too high level, Matt's gonna start digging in and explaining more specifically about the site.
Thank you, Tim. Next slide. Okay, so mic check. Sound good? Okay. All right. So I know there's been a lot of concern about the plume size and whether it's been growing or not. So I have here a slide that shows the 2006 versus right now, 2023. So in blue, we have the 2006 which is kind of when we stopped the work out there, the last round before that. And I have an orange, the 2023 data, and so it is larger. You can see we've got some area calculations out there for the different sizes of the plume during different phases. In 2000, when we started work, we had the 100 microgram per liter contour at 5 acres. In 2006, following our pilot study, it was reduced some, or a little under 3, and now it's a little under 4. And similarly, the 5 microgram per liter contour, which is the largest ring in both the orange and the blue, the largest perimeter is drawn out to 5. The 5 microgram per liter contour is significant because that's the MCL for TCE, the maximum contaminant level, the maximum amount allowed in your drinking water. That would be a hazard. And so in 2000, it was 21 acres. Going 2006, it was down to 16, and it's now currently about 28. So it is shown larger, and it probably is a little larger. There has been 19 new wells put in 2019, 2020, and that's one of the things is that before we didn't have the well density that we have now. So you look at this blue line for the 2006, we had a well where my laser pointer is. We had one down here, and we didn't have any wells for 600 feet. So we did have to make some assumptions when drawing that. We had some uncertainty in the plume size. Now we have wells in the southwest at 200, 250 feet. We have better density out there. So I'm not coming up here and saying that the plume hasn't grown. I'm saying our understanding of it has grown. We know where the contamination is better now. And that's all. So move on to the next slide. All right, this is our groundwater data. Like I mentioned, we just put in 2019 and 2020, we put in 19 new monitoring wells. And with that data, I can show you on the left, we have the TCE concentrations out there. We sample these wells quarterly. So going back to December 2019, we started sampling, and we've sampled them quarterly since. And we're sampling them for volatile organic compounds. That includes trichloroethylene. And then trichloroethylene can degrade naturally in the subsurface to cis-1,2-dichloroethylene and vinyl chloride. And we're also looking for fuel-related contaminants, benzene, ethylbenzene, xylene, and I'm forgetting one, but we're looking for it. And we're looking for all these at levels that we have we're making sure all of our samples that we collect, we can find the contaminants at levels that are below risk-based screening levels. So we want to make sure we can find them at levels that could be harmful. The site itself, the TCE plume probably originated somewhere around the Placer County line, which is also where DoD operated or had Quonset huts during the operation of the missile silos. So there may have been some releases up there, and the groundwater for the site flows to the southwest, which is why we have the shape of the plume that we see here today. The groundwater, you can find it about 20 to 30 feet below ground surface in the area of extraction well 1, our hotspot, which is about 500 micrograms per liter of TCE. And as we flow to the southwest, the groundwater pinches out a little shallower. You can find it 5 feet below ground surface in a real wet season. The picture that I'm blocking right now is someone sampling groundwater. So that's one of our older monitoring wells. The newer ones are yellow and cylindrical. This one's square and stainless steel in color, but that's just a protective casing around our monitoring well, which is inside there. So the person here is sampling the groundwater. You might have seen this once a quarter. It's a little bladder pump. Drop it in, pull out some water, send it off to the lab. And then I think I'll point out, like I mentioned before, the 5 microgram per liter contour, the largest ring there on our groundwater contour. That's That's the MCL, and it is approaching the residential area. But when we look at the groundwater data, we're looking at TCE, above. We're looking at places where we have TCE above our risk-based screening levels, and we're also looking for a way that it's reaching a receptor, which in this case would be a resident. And so in this case, nobody in the residential neighborhood to the west is using this as a drinking water source, and the potential development, we understand it's also not going to be using it as a drinking water source. So there's no imminent danger to the community caused by the groundwater right now, because it's not reaching a receptor, it's not being drank. So similarly with the soil vapor, next slide. So similar to the soil vapor, we have put in 24 new soil vapor probes since we began work out here again in 2019 and 2020. Again, we sample them for TCE and all the volatile organic compounds. Here we're looking at a risk-based screening level in air, or we're looking at for a soil gas screening level is 16 micrograms per meter cubed, which is the residential vapor intrusion human health risk screening level. That's a level that, if detected in the soil gas, is protective of human receptors. And we're looking at our TCE concentrations, and we have 3 purple circles, if you will, on the map where we have TCE above that screening level. So we're keeping an eye on those. We also have a green, I don't see it there. So we should have another zigzag line. Oh, perfect. Okay, so we also have a green row, if you will, of wells that we're sampling where we don't have TCE vapors above 16. So by this we can see that we don't have TCE at levels above our screening level, so we don't have soil gas that's approaching a receptor, a resident, and creating any kind of dangerous situation. So again, the residents are not in immediate danger from soil gas concentrations. Now we do have this kind of hotspot up here called SV1, where we have a relatively high TCE and we have no TCE in the groundwater. It's a little bit of a head scratcher for us. And so we did do some extra work out there in 2022. We put 4 new soil vapor probes out there, try and help us understand better the nature and extent, as Tim said. We did get some more data. We found another new spot with elevated TCE, SV22. But we still probably don't have a full understanding of that delineation over there, or the source. And so it's a continuing effort on our part to figure that one out. But again, no one's living there. There's no receptors in the immediate area, so it's not an immediate concern. It's one that we're looking at and planning for with our remedial investigation and feasibility study. That would be it. At this point, I'll pass it over to Tim again.
Thank you, Matt. So this is a repeat slide, but I want to throw it up there once again. Our plan for the future, just to kind of reiterate it, it will take a while, and I wish we could come and tell you, I wish I could give you a date of here is when this TCE will be cleaned up. But we have a process to work through before we can tell you with confidence when that will happen. And that's our unfortunately we make our way through this process so that we take the right path and get this TCE cleaned up. Next slide, please. So future activities, what you can expect is first is the proposed plan. And that is the chance where you will have a chance the public will have a chance to review that plan, and there is an official comment period where you can provide comments regarding the plan. And this plan is moving us forward to the remediation. There's options in the plan of what we have at least 3 options. and then we think this is the best option. And we invite comments on the public on that process. Move on to a record of decision. This documents the remediation that we are going to go for. The water board is heavily involved at this period. The remedy must be protective of human health and the environment. And there's ARARs, applicable or relevant and appropriate environmental requirements. Those are part of this record of decision, and it's things that we must comply, we must carry forth with. Also, this provides a response to the water board, the regulator, the public comments are received. Then we move into a transition into a remedial design. This is what everybody wants right now, and this is where we're heading towards. It's where we transition from collecting information to actually cleaning up the site. That's the point where the fulcrum, where we make a beautiful turn and start addressing the site and cleaning up that TCE. And the remedial action part is where after we do whatever we decide that's going to clean up the TCE, then it's implemented, and we assure that it is maintained and that those TCE levels don't creep back up, and hopefully we did not miss anything at that point, and we move to a response complete. Done. That's the goal of where we're headed. Restoration Advisory Board for the next, I know there has been questions about that. Some of you were mailed a letter about a Restoration Advisory Board. This is a point where we exchange information. The Corps of Engineers, the Water Board, the City of Lincoln, the Homeowners Association. We function different members are picked for certain reasons to sit on the board, and then the public, all of you are invited to participate in those boards once it gets set up. So that's the point of it. It's a way where communication can flow two ways. We provide you what we're doing. You provide us with your concerns. Perhaps you want to understand something better. That's where we address that at the RAB at a continual scheduled basis. Current status: we are moving towards a RAB. I say moving towards. I know some of you don't like that language. Our colonel has to approve the RAB, and we as a technical team, we're recommending our colonel approve the RAB, but it's his decision, and hopefully that will happen in the not too future. So we are reaching out. We're still continuing to reach out to those of you who would like to serve on the RAB. If you did not get a letter in the mail, we have forms at the table outside there that you can fill out and put your information, or even just, you don't have to serve as a member on the board itself, but if you want to be part of that, please fill out that the RAB information. And also, if you do not want to do that today, our project website, there'll be a link where you can fill out a form if you have interest in serving on that RAB. And please submit it before June 11th. So June 11th, we're gonna draw a line there and consider those. Those of you who submitted it by email, I believe I've responded back to every one of you. We haven't responded back to those of you who we've received hard copies. We will do that just to let you know, okay, we have received it, but it'll be June 11th is when we'll make that final cutoff. So I encourage you, if you feel like you want to serve on a RAB, please do. And last slide, I'm going to pass it off to Tyler. And again, thank you so much for your time. Sorry this presentation probably went along a little longer than we'd hoped. We are going to be here for as long as it takes to answer your questions. So there are people some experts in this room. The knowledge base is very high. If I can't answer your question, I'm going to point you to somebody who can, so please come up and approach us afterwards, and I'd love to talk to you one-on-one. So thank you again, and I'll pass it to Tyler.
Cool, Thank you, Tim. As he mentioned, we are going to do all of our questions out in the public forum when we do our workshop, our open house workshop. Uh, be- be- we are not answering questions in this forum right here because there are a lot of you, and we would like to have as many conversations with residents as we can. And when we do group questions and answers, you can only get through a handful or a few of those, and you can't have those conversations with all the people. So we've thought it best in this first scenario to talk individually with different experts and all the residents to see kind of if we can answer all of your questions in that setting. Moving on to the last slide. Excuse me. Sir, we can talk about it in. Sir, we can talk about it after this. Sir, we'll have an opportunity to talk, and we can do those as soon as we're done here. We're done in just a couple minutes. Just give me 2 more minutes. So we do want to connect with you all, and today is the first kind of piece of that. We have a few other ways. We've mentioned it a few times. Titan1acleanup.com. It's going to be your best resource for the latest status, answering questions that we're hearing regularly. We're going to post them there so that everybody can see the answer later. It has, like I said, it has the link to GeoTracker and all the documents. It also does have the presentation slides here from tonight are on that website. The RAB community interest form that you can download and send in is on that website. So, and then we also have our email distribution list. If you haven't signed in, make sure you go do that. And then lastly, contact information for our public affairs office or our FUDS program. Have emails and phone numbers on here. I would like to thank you all for attending tonight. We're going to have all of our experts out in this little alcove outside the doors here. Members from the Water Quality Control Board are also out there. And we look forward to having some conversations and talking with you all tonight. And hopefully more information on the RAB will be coming soon. Thank you all, and that's all we got tonight. Thank you.